Hello, I'm Martha Cummings, the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Boat Museum, and I'm here to welcome you to our 14th annual and first ever virtual Boathouse tour, all made possible by our generous sponsor, Lake Life Realty, and through the generosity of our boathouse owners, as we take you from just one lake to 3 lakes this year across the lakes region, and also bring you to an exceptional car collection. Thank you for making a donation, and as you do, you'll be entered into a raffle for a granite plaque that's being given by Lake Effects in Meredith. Now it's my honor and privilege to introduce our narrator and host of our tour today, Ernest Thompson, Oscar-winning playwright, screenwriter, actor, director, and songwriter, who shares the same passion that we do for our boating heritage and lake life culture here in New Hampshire. So we really hope you enjoy your cruise across the lakes region, and thank you so much for joining us.
Where do stories come from? The ones that become plays and movies and books and songs. They come from the heart, or the mind, or the dreams of someone whose life experience or longing or curiosity compelled him or her to want to go exploring. When I was a little boy on my lake in Maine, a magical place not dissimilar to the lakes region of New Hampshire, I was encamped in a cottage with no telephone, no radio, or television, and virtually no neighbors of the human variety anyway. I had siblings whom I shared raucous games of hide and seek and flashlight tag and parcheesi with, whom I could fish with, and join in hunting for pirates' bounty washed up on our undeveloped shore, but mostly I was alone, in my head, if not in fact. I had books to read and forts to erect and trails to blaze. I had a canoe to cross our vast cove in, and I had the greatest traveling companion of all, my imagination. Sometimes on my idle meanderings, when I swam or paddled past them, or on our family's once-a-year exotic circumnavigation of the lake on the mailboat, I would gaze at the smattering of boathouses dotting our waterfront, just as they do on Lake Winnipesaukee and Squam and the other glittering crystals on New Hampshire's treasure map of precious jewels. Some of the mysterious structures were woebegone and run down, some luxurious castles made of stone and wood, but all of them held what all of us are drawn by in life and in literature, an invitation to wonder. What lay beyond those shingled walls? What secrets did each venerable boathouse have to offer? Some seemed ancient, dating back to the late 1800s when the summer people arrived by train and steamboat and stayed from June to Labor Day. The men in those quaintly prehistoric times, commuting to work in the cities, leaving their wives and children safely ensconced in paradise, along with their showpiece boats in their boathouses. Why were they called houses, I would ask, not boat garages or barns? Some had windows with curtains, some had upstairs apartments. For the staff, I assumed, in some highfalutin society I, the son of school teachers, couldn't begin to envision. I'm sitting at the moment, not in a boathouse, but a gazebo. An edifice just as indigenous and just as romantic and elegant to a young story writer who couldn't have known he'd someday grow up and turn into one. We had just such a gazebo on our cove in Maine, a few docks away and a quarter-mile down lake from the nearest boathouse. Ample inspiration, in other words, to invent my own answers to the questions these fabulous architectural oddities suggest. Why are they here? When were they built? What stories do they have to tell? This particular gazebo is from a movie I wrote, can't remember the name of it now. Oh, on Golden Pond. In the unlikely event that you've seen it, though I'm pretty sure it's required viewing for anyone in New Hampshire, you may recognize this open-air living room as the spot where Jane Fonda and Katharine Hepburn performed a legendary scene, and where later, in the film Henry Fonda, as the revivified old man made a sweet overture to his sleeping wife. I wrote the gazebo into the screenplay because how could I not? This one was constructed on the location property, which also boasted a charming rustic boathouse. It didn't make it into the movie, but it will in the long overdue sequel, which I'm looking forward to getting back to on the far side of COVID. Stay tuned. Right now, I have another story for you. The story of 5 boathouses on Lake Winnipesaukee and 1 on Squam, but I'll let them speak for themselves on this, the New Hampshire Boat Museum's 14th annual Boathouse Tour. Online this year, and a ride worth taking. So, hop aboard. You'll see, in addition, an armada of antique boats and a staggering collection of vintage cars, all from the comfort of your front row seat. All you need to bring along are your own curiosity and imagination, and to be prepared to fall so irreversibly in love with the hypnotic majesty of New Hampshire's boathouses and their pastoral setting that you'll want to do what I'm doing in my own modest way, supporting a glorious cause. Celebrating and preserving not only the houses and the boats they protect, the history and nostalgia of a way of life that seems, especially now, so innocent and uncomplicated, but also the purity and accessibility of New Hampshire's pristine lakes. So beautiful, they could star in a movie.
Hello, I'm Raj Hamblin, and welcome to Boulder Brook Boathouse. Oh, we came to Squam Lake in 1976. We had 2 inns in Waterville Valley, and we'd been there since 1971, and we needed some escape from that business, and so we found a nice little camp on Squam Lake, which I paid $50,000 for, and it had 650 feet of frontage and a nice cottage, and I hate to believe what it would sell for today. Certainly somewhere around $2.5 million, I think. It's really crazy. But anyway, that's how we got to Squam. We wanted to escape Waterville Valley. The boathouse was probably built sometime, I know, before World War II. The house was built in 1910, so I have to assume the boathouse came shortly after that. And it's been here ever since. I presume I've done a lot of work on it to keep it in the condition it's in now. And at one time it was larger. There was another structure attached to the south side of the boathouse that went down with the weather, I presume, but the cribs were still there, and over time I was able to get a permit to cover those cribs with a deck, which is really a very enjoyable part of the boathouse. The winter of 1990, I decided I needed to have a nice wooden boat, and obviously the first thing I did was go to George Johnson, and George showed me around to some boats, and he was trying to direct me to a U-22, which didn't really excite me that much. I wanted something a little fancier than a U-22. So I eventually found a boat that Wayne Moxfield, who was George's competitor in New Jersey, had. This boat. It actually belonged to Wayne's father. The name of the Chris Craft is Magic, and somewhere my wife and I read that there was good luck in naming a boat with 5 letters. And magic seemed like a great 5-letter word. It does magic. The boat does magical things to people and to us, and we've always enjoyed that name. We've had it on several boats, and we're happy with it. And then in a covered slip next to the boathouse, I, by chance, have another 1953 boat, which is a 15-foot Lyman outboard, which we really enjoy. It's especially nice. It's kind of like being in a sports car on the water. So that's our fleet here on Squam Lake, other than some canoes and sunfish and things like that.
I'm Ray Moritz, luckily the resident here in Windy Waters on beautiful Lake Waukesha. Legend has it that the Indians that camped here named the lake, and Windy Waters was its meaning. Two brothers, the Corcorans, built the original camp here in the late 40s. One was married with a family and the other was single, and he rarely got to use the place. So together they built the boathouse with an upstairs apartment for the single brother. Unfortunately, as so often happens, when the camp passed on to the next generation, sharing its use became a bone of contention and they decided to sell. That was lucky for me. We bought the place in 1984, thinking it would be a good rental property. But we quickly learned to love the place, and it still hasn't seen its first renter. The original camp had a great room, kitchen, bath, and 4 bedrooms, all in a whopping 900 square feet. It pumped the water right out of the lake, used a wood-burning stove in the kitchen, and had a cast iron tank for septic. Knowing that we would eventually want to make this our year-round home, we replaced the camp house, but retained the boathouse just as it was when it was built. We modernized the apartment somewhat, but the downstairs boathouse is the same as when it was built. The apartment mostly gets used by our grandchildren, or sometimes by their parents wanting to get away. Last year, it was occupied from June through September by a lovely young AmeriCorps volunteer, Allison, who was helping the Lake Winnipesaukee Association with environmental remediation projects. You may notice that there's a small deck on the front of the boathouse. I think it has the best view in the world. Downstairs, you'll find the collection of water toys the family collects over the years. There's a sunfish, an O'Day day sailor, a Zodiac, a windsurfer, a canoe, and even 2 kayaks. As you probably know, Lake Waukesha is the water supply for our town, Meredith. As such, it's imperative that we keep our beautifully clean water that way. We have an active conservation association, the Windy Waters Conservancy, that by working with the town and the Department of Environmental Services has managed to put over a mile of waterfront on the Snake River that feeds us into conservation easements. We're very grateful to have so many of our friends and neighbors love the lake enough that they work to protect and keep it pristine. I hope you enjoyed your brief tour of Windy Waters.
Okay, when did I buy it, huh? And how did I find it? And that's about what you might want to know. So I retired back in 1990. I gave my order to retire from banking in 1990, and I decided, Vida and I decided we wanted to come up on the lake. I took realtors around and we saw this place on the map, and I said, that looks awfully interesting to me, Hornets Nest Point. Come December, I had finalized the purchase of the property, 4.5 acres, known, as I just said, to Hornets Nest Point. We decided to build the boathouse similar to the house, insulated, heated, so it is above temperature, above 32 degrees in here all winter long. The boat will be lifted up out of the water. It weighs about 36,000 pounds. Where all the instrumentation is in the boat that shows the depths, side, down, backwards, all around. Make it so if you get lost, you know how to get home. And it was built in College Point, New York in 1930, as you can see. It sleeps 6 people. You can put any number around it. It's legal to drink on it, except the driver. It found in a field back in 1989 and rebuilt in 1990. Have had it. I slept on the boat while I was building the other 2 buildings, the hangar for the helicopter and the house itself. My wife's middle name is Rothella, but we decided then that was the name of the boat, and that's what was going to be, and that's what's on it today. Well, of course, I'm a World War II veteran. I flew in the Naval Air Corps. I flew torpedo bombers, and actually what they're saying about the virus today doesn't seem to bother me too much, because a torpedo run, the life expectancy of you was about 10 seconds. And if you made it through that one, then you got ready for the next one. I've always wanted boats. I've always wanted things that generally I couldn't afford. So I would have to work very hard in order to get to whatever I wanted. Vida enjoyed it here. She loved it. We both did. We wanted to be here ourselves. We found these 2 coves to be excellent for us. There were no other houses here at the time except the one very, very in the beginning on the left-hand side as you come in.
Hi, welcome to Moultonborough and the Black Point Boathouse. I'm Mark Evans, and this is my boathouse, and my shepherds behind me. We're the third owners of this property. It was started sometime in the 30s by one family. They sold it in '55. We bought it in 1999, and this is a new boathouse. There are photographs of the old boathouse. It's developed over the years, but I put a boathouse in place for wood boats. The original structure was corrugated metal outside with sides and an overhead door. It also had a manual lift that you use hand cranks to lift up the boats. I still have the winches. They're quite an antique. The boathouse was much shorter in those days. It was probably only 25 feet long. However, the weather and the ice and the winters put quite a toll on it and started to crumble the foundation, which was only rocks. The current boathouse was constructed in 2002 by Watermark Marine. Paul Goodwin was the president then, and he helped me finish up a lot of my ideas. He designed the overhead lift that allows me to take in a second boat. He designed the lift for the shepherd, which is built into the boathouse. And also these posts come out to allow for accessibility of the flat deck. So there's a lot of different things inside this narrow, long boathouse that you couldn't do without some good engineering and a good manufacturer to build it. Innovation continued with the entryway and the accessibility to the boats, with using 2 barn-style doors on either side. They're 8 foot wide, and it allows you to walk up the side of the boathouse, have people enter. It also allows for disembarkment and taking materials out. But without that, it would be very hard without having sliding doors. The Original owners built all the buildings on the 4 buildings on the property. It's a small lot, but I have a main house, 2 stories, a cottage that was heated and used as a rental by the prior owners, a garage that has 3 levels to it, and the boathouse. It's quite astonishing what they did on a small lot. But it allows us to have the family, the entire family, here in 3 different buildings, in fact 4 different buildings at times. But it allows us to spread out and have space and also enjoy the lakefront. Behind me is my 1958 24-foot Shepherd that's powered by twin Chrysler Crown engines with 250 combined horsepower. The boat will cruise along at 40 miles an hour with 10 people and take the rough water of Lake Winnipesaukee. It's a very dry boat, very comfortable, it's very heavy, but it's also very fast. I've owned the boat for over 22 years. It's been refinished twice, and it runs like it's brand new. My interest and passion for wood boats continued and still to today. It got me involved with lots of interesting senior people that were historians in the market. I got to meet people like George Johnson, Jim Irwin, many other people across the country. One thing common with wood boat people, is their willingness to share with you the rides and the interest in the stories. Thanks for letting me tell the story of the Black Point Boathouse in Moulton Borough. Having a boathouse is a luxury. It's a lot of work, but it does save you a lot of work in caring for a boat, especially a wood boat. I enjoy spending time in here just putting around. It's my home. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, I'm Mark Smith, and welcome to Hazelnut Farm and my collection of antique Fords. This building was built in 2013. It was built specifically to house this collection of cars. So this year, because of the coronavirus, we can't give you a ride in the car for the Boathouse tour, but we can have everybody look at the collection through the video, and you can see all of the cars instead of just the one that we have on the tour that day. This car is a 1928 Model A Ford Phaeton. I bought this car in 2015 in Sandwich, New Hampshire. It is the way I bought it. It runs really great, and my wife and I enjoy driving this car around town and traveling in it. There's plenty of room to carry luggage or anything that you want with you, even extra parts in case you break down. This car is a 1929 Ford Model A 4-door sedan. It has a leather back on it, and they refer to it as a leatherback. I have owned this car since 1968. It was not in this shape when I got it. It was totally unrestored. And my parents gave me this car as a high school graduation present, and then I restored it afterwards. I have used this car on the Boathouse tour, and I would do it again because it carries 3 passengers and a driver. This car is a 1912 Model T Ford. It's a touring car. It does carry 3 passengers and a driver, but we probably would not use this on the Boathouse tour. It's a little delicate, tends to overheat, and it is the oldest car in my collection, and I bought this in 2012 as a retirement gift to myself. This car is a 1931 Model A Ford convertible sedan, sometimes referred to as an A400. I bought this car in this condition, And again, it carries 3 passengers and a driver. It's interesting because it is a convertible. When the top goes down, the window frames stay where they are, but the top is down, and you get the convertible action out of it. It is two-tone green, a lighter green on this main body, and the molding is a little bit darker green with a different color green pinstripe. This car is a 1923 Model T Roadster pickup. My father bought this car in 1955. I was 5 years old, and I have a picture of myself standing on the seat, steering the car, while my father and my brothers, my 2 older brothers, pushed the car into the garage. My job that day was to steer around the big hole in the driveway and make it easier for my brother and dad to push the car into the garage. I promptly steered right into the hole, and my dad was not real happy about that. I learned how to drive on this car when I was 12 years old. When I was 14 years old, I broke my arm cranking this car. Model T Fords are famous for broken arms. When I was 16, I got my license. I came home from school that day with my fresh license. I asked my father if I could take the car out for a ride, and he said, of course I could. And I promptly went downtown, in the town where we grew up, and I drove into the back of a dump truck that stopped in front of me. My dad wasn't real happy about that. In 1971, when Heather and I got married, this is the car that we drove away from the church in. My collection consists mostly of Model A Fords. Model A's were built 1928, 29, 30, and 31. And from the time I started collecting antique cars or Model A's, I always wanted to have one for each year. And I now have one for each year, and I enjoy driving them. I'm often asked which one of my cars is my favorite. And my answer to that is, my favorite is the one that I'm driving that day. I do have one, the 1923 Model T Roadster pickup that I have is the most special to me because it was my father's first antique car. But I love all of them, I enjoy driving all of them, and everybody should have a Model A. Thank you for visiting with us today at the Hazelnut Farm Car Collection. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and although I won't be seeing you on the lake because I don't have a boat, I probably will see you on the road, and I hope you enjoy the 2020 Boat Museum Boathouse Tour. And I'm Mark Smith. Thank you again.
Good morning, I'm Vince Bober. Welcome to Mahogany Boathouse. Our family has owned this boathouse since about 1981, and it has been completely rebuilt. The original was quite old and it was kind of tumbling down. One day my dad knocked on the next door neighbor's door and wanted to know if she wanted to sell her boathouse, and she informed him that it wasn't her boathouse, and she sure would like to see something done with that eyesore. So she introduced him to a man named Arthur Pogson. Arthur said yes, he would sell it. So my dad and Arthur came to an agreement. Dad bought the place, and very shortly after that, tore it down and built the boathouse that's here. The original boathouse was built quite a while ago. We don't know exactly when. I do have photographs of it with when Ed McGimmons owned it in 1933, and he ran a barber shop on the second floor of the building, and you may have seen the barber sign on the outside of the building. That's kind of a tribute to Ed. The interior of the boathouse, as you can see, is pretty utilitarian. We use it. We use it as a shop when necessary. We do work on boats in here. The trusses are pretty sturdy in here, and there's beams that run down the center of each one of the boathouse slips, and it can support chain falls, and we can lift boats, we can lift engines, align engines, do whatever is necessary to work on the boats. In addition to the removable floor that we have put in one of the boat slips, we also have a small carpenter's workbench in the front. Presently there are 4 boats in a 3-slip boathouse. One of them houses our 1929 Chris Craft named Ramona, and that's been in the boathouse on and off since about 1999 when the restoration was completed. The other boat that we see in here is named Judith, and it was a boat, it's a Johnson launch, and it was built in Laconia, and it is presently owned by Howard Newton. It was restored under the direction of Glenn Raish, and it was known then as Golden Girl. The Johnson Laker that's in the boathouse, it's rather unique. It was built in 1925, and it has an oak deck, which was original to the boat, and it was restored under the direction of Glenn Raish by High Gloss Restoration in Laconia. I had a race boat named Wildcat. It was a replica of a 1923 designed Hacker Gold Cup race boat, and it was powered by a Rolls-Royce V12 engine, and we enjoyed our time with that, traveled a lot with it, and it now resides in the Sinsheim Museum in Germany. Along with boats and boating, I've had a lot of benefits from it. During my boating experiences, I learned how to deal with foundries because I needed castings. I learned how to deal with platers because I needed plating. When we moved to New Hampshire in 1974, we ended up going to a boat show in 1976, I believe it was, and I saw some of the boats up there, and I was particularly impressed with a boat that Bill Willig had at the boat show, and it had the really interesting Dietrich convertible top. So when I finally ended up buying Ramona in 1976, I decided it should have a convertible top. And my dad and I decided, well, he had a boat that could use one, I had a boat that could use one, so we'll build a couple of tops. Well, pretty soon we built about 20 tops, and that was quite enough. 1976, we had gone to one of the spring meets for the Antique and Classic Boat Society, and at that point I had met Mark Mason, and I found out that he was working on a Hispano-Suiza engine, and I had just spent 9 years in Detroit as an engine development engineer. So Mark and I hit it off on some common grounds there, and we've been friends ever since, and we've had some really great projects together, including Rolls-Royce engine conversions, Miller engines for race boats, and just about any weird thing you can think of that came along, and we got involved in it. And I was working in Rochester at the time, and a fella drove up in a parking lot across the street with a truck and a trailer, and the trailer had a 22-foot Chris Craft Cadet on it. So I walked across the street to talk to him, and that's how I met Jeff Magnuson. And I told him I was looking for some parts for my 1939 Chris Craft, and he said, well, you ought to go meet George Johnson. He lives in Wolfboro. And George was the smoothest salesman I've ever met. He took me in a boat ride to show me a windshield on a boat that was the one that I wanted. He said it wasn't available, but he wanted to show it to me. Well, he took me for a ride in one of the ex-Miss Winnipesaukis, about 1930 Chris Craft 26-foot upswept deck. Well, George sure knows how to sell things. He didn't say a thing, but boy, after that, I sure wanted one of those boats. I guess I could say I probably enjoy working on boats as much as I do driving them. So I do get a lot of pleasure out of woodworking, the mechanical aspects of it. And yeah, sometimes it's frustrating, but in the end, it all seems to work out.
Welcome to Morin's Mooring, a boathouse owned by William and Francesca Mudge. This rare and early boathouse is located in the snug harbor of Lakeport, which was once known as Lake Village during the mid-19th century. Lake Village was an important railroad town, bustling with commerce and industry. It was not until 1893 that it became part of the city of Laconia. Boat building, especially steamers, were important to the trade in Lake Village, moving freight such as wood, ice, and passengers to all points of Lake Winnipesaukee. The Morin residence, also at this location, was one of the few to survive the Great Fire of 1903, and shortly thereafter, in 1910, the original boathouse was built and still stands today, much like it now appears. Approaching the boathouse are 6 individual boat slips designed for a working livery of boats, ideal for the early long narrow laker or smaller working vessels of yesteryear. Structurally sound, the boathouse was refurbished with a new roof and a redesign of docking in 1960. The strong beams and substantial underwater cribbing are all original and have stood the test of time. Sheltered in this boathouse are a variety of vessels that represent the many reasons we are passionate about lake life and boating recreation. A desirable Donzi, the Ferrari of powerboats, rests in slip number 1, arguably the most recognized sports boat ever created. Also hidden in this boathouse are some wonderfully loved boats, including the River Rat, which goes out for a daily catch of fish that are native to our waters. Built by the owner is a reproduction of an early mahogany runabout called the Liebchen, which resides in bay number 4. In the last narrow boat slip is the 24th Fairhaven. Built in 1920 at the Consolidated Boat Company in New York City, it was originally equipped with a Speedway 4-cylinder engine and has spent her last 100 years on Lake Winnipesaukee. She is remembered as the Crane Crest, a stunning wedding gift to Dr. Henry Crane from his father of Pine Island. Reverend Crane desired more speed and installed a new engine, a Universal, in 1929, which remains operational today. It was Mrs. Crane that desired more stability, and the doctor wanted more speed, that inspired them to offer this lake to William Honeywell in 1960. Bill's daughter Sandy recalls, "She was my father's pride and joy." This was the beginning of Sandy Fiskin's relationship with the Fairhaven and an active membership into the ACBS. With Bill's passing in 1973, and as the aging successors and younger generations dispersed, the Fairhaven has been blessed with a new captain and first mate, Norm and Susan McWigan, whose delight and pride in their boat matched that of Bill Honeywell's and Dr. Crane's of so many years ago. The family is pleased that the Fairhaven is in such capable hands and is loved and honored into the next century. We thank Bill Mudge and his wife Francesca for allowing us to take a peek in their historic and charming boathouse. And now our host, Oscar Award-winning playwright, Ernest Thompson.
Ernest Thompson again saying in closing what I've said to literally thousands of actors who've taken up residence on Golden Pond. I hope you've enjoyed your time on the lake. As is true of the loons and the famous fish, one was named Walter, as I recall, our visit to these amaranthine waters is fleeting. Their lingering effect on us, profound. Thank you for supporting the New Hampshire Boat Museum and by extension, the breathtaking allure of the Lakes region. There are people all over the world and even in America who have no idea where or what New Hampshire is, and we like it that way. But if ever you want to bring it home, try mentioning 3 simple words, on Golden Pond. They may conjure images of what a dream state we live in. The only way the New Hampshire Boat Museum can do its part in keeping the dream alive is if we do ours. Thank you for your generous contributions. These are challenging times for all the natural wonders on our planet and for us in this pandemic. But our innate survival instinct summons us to apply our indomitable spirit to figuring out solutions, and we will. We're strong and proud and resilient and creative. And together, we'll continue writing our story.
The pasture out they create still plays on.